So picture this. You're chilling in the Midwest, maybe Ohio, Illinois, or Missouri, land of cornfields, friendly folks, and massive earthquakes? Yeah, you heard that right. It sounds like something straight out of a disaster movie, but believe it or not, the central U.S. has a history of some of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in North America. And the big question is, could it happen again? Today we're diving deep into the new Madrid Seismic Zone to figure this out. No crazy jargon, I promise. Just the straight-up science behind what's shaking beneath the surface. So, let's get our bearings. When you think of earthquakes, you probably think of California, right? That's because it's right on the edge of the Pacific and North American tectonic plates. These massive slabs of Earth's crust are constantly grinding against each other, building up stress that eventually gets released as an earthquake. That's a classic plate boundary, and it makes perfect sense. But the Midwest? It's smack dab in the middle of the North American plate, thousands of miles from any major edge. So why on earth would it have earthquakes? To understand this, we need to travel back in time. Like way back, about 600 million years ago. Back then, the continent we now know as North America actually tried to rip itself apart. It was a failed continental rift, like the Earth started to unzip, but then stopped. Imagine taking a dinner plate and scoring it down the middle with a knife, but not breaking it all the way through. That plate is now much weaker along that score line. That's exactly what happened to the North American plate. This ancient failed rift left behind a massive, deep scar in the Earth's crust. This scar is a zone of weakness, buried miles beneath the soil and rock. We call this the real foot rift, and the new Madrid Seismic Zone sits right on top of it. Now, even though the Midwest is in the middle of a plate, the whole plate is still moving. It's slowly drifting southwest, being pushed and pulled by forces from the surrounding plates. All this pushing and pulling puts stress on the entire plate. And where does that stress tend to concentrate? You guessed it. On the weakest points. Like our scored dinner plate, even a little bit of pressure can cause a crack to form along that old line of weakness. That's what's happening in the new Madrid zone. The ancient faults in the real foot rift are the weak spot, and the slow, steady stress of the plate's movement is loading them up with energy. Now let's talk about the big ones. Between December 1811 and February 1812, this region was hit by a series of absolutely monstrous earthquakes. We're talking 3 main shocks that are estimated to have been over magnitude 7.0, plus thousands of aftershocks. These quakes were so powerful they were felt as far away as Washington, D.C. and Boston. Eyewitness accounts from the time are wild. They said the ground rolled in waves, giant cracks opened up, and the Mississippi River literally flowed backward for a short time as the land was violently uplifted. It even created new lakes, like Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee. Think about that for a second. An earthquake so strong it changes the course of one of the world's mightiest rivers. That's some serious power. The reason it was felt over such a huge area is because the rock in the central U.S. is older, colder, and more solid than the fractured rock out in California. So when an earthquake happens, the seismic waves can travel much farther and more efficiently, like ringing a giant bell. A magnitude 7 in the Midwest can cause damage over an area 10 times larger than a similar quake in California. So, the billion-dollar question, is it going to happen again? Well, the honest answer is yes, eventually. The faults are still there, and the stress is still building up. Geologists and seismologists are pretty much in agreement that another major earthquake will strike the new Madrid zone. The tricky part is the when. Predicting earthquakes is notoriously difficult. We're talking about geological time, not human time. Looking at the data, scientists have estimated the recurrence interval for these big events. For a magnitude 7.0 or larger quake, the estimates range from every 500 to 1,000 years. Since the last major sequence was in 1811-1812, over 200 years ago, we are technically within that window. There's also a chance of a smaller, but still very damaging, magnitude 6.0 quake. Scientists say there's a 25 to 40% probability of one of these happening in the next 50 years. While not as catastrophic as a 7.0, a 6.0 could still cause billions of dollars in damage, especially because the Midwest isn't built for earthquakes. Think about it. Most of the buildings and infrastructure in cities like Memphis, St. Louis, and Little Rock were constructed without the strict seismic codes you see in places like Los Angeles or San Francisco. Many older buildings are made of unreinforced brick, which is one of the worst materials to be in during an earthquake. It just crumbles. This lack of preparedness is what makes the threat so serious. It's not just about the ground shaking, it's about what happens to our world when it does. So what are scientists doing about it? Some recent GPS studies have been a bit of a curveball. They've shown very little, if any, strain accumulating at the surface. This has led some scientists to suggest that maybe the threat isn't as imminent as we thought, or that the fault system is shutting down. But other scientists disagree, arguing that the strain might be building up much deeper in the crust, where the GPS can't see it and will only reveal itself when it's too late. The debate is ongoing, but no one is saying the risk is zero. The simple fact is we know these faults have produced massive quakes in the past, and there's no reason to believe they can't do it again. So, what does this all mean for you, especially if you live in the Midwest? It means being aware, not afraid. The first step is acknowledging that the risk is real. Federal and state emergency agencies like FEMA take this threat very seriously and run drills for a new Madrid earthquake scenario. The most important thing you can do is prepare. Have an emergency kit with water, food, a first aid kit, and a flashlight. Know what to do during an earthquake. Drop, cover, and hold on. Get under a sturdy table or desk and protect your head and neck. Talk to your family and have a plan for where to meet and how to communicate if you get separated. Secure heavy furniture, like bookshelves and big TVs, to the wall so they don't fall over. These simple steps can make a huge difference. So, to wrap it all up, is a Midwest megaquake imminent? Imminent might be too strong a word, as it could still be decades or even centuries away. But is it a certainty for the future? Absolutely. An ancient, hidden weakness beneath America's heartland is slowly being loaded with stress. The past shows us what it's capable of, and the modern science tells us the risk is still very much alive. It's a fascinating, and a little terrifying piece of geology happening right under our feet. Thanks for sticking with me through that deep dive. I hope this cleared things up and gave you a better understanding of what's going on. It's a huge topic, and it's super important to be informed. If you found this video interesting or helpful, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.